As we near the end of version 5 and 6 of Genshin's nations are decently developed, I began to wonder, which of these 6 nations is the most balanced? So I looked into it and this is what I found. Now, to determine how I determined the most balanced nation, I didn't want to look at something like meta or lore-based power ranking, no. I wanted to definitively prove the most balanced nation using cold, hard data. So, to find the most balanced Genshin nation, I made my determination based on 3 categories: the comparisons between nation and element, nation and weapon, and nation and body type. By looking at these 3 categories, I could find the answer I was looking for. Now, you might be wondering, how exactly am I going to find out and determine which nation is the most balanced in each of these categories? So let me explain. Each nation has a total amount of characters designated to that nation in-game. By looking at the percentage of that total in each category, I can then determine which nation has the most even spread across the variables. And as a tiny disclaimer, I won't be including characters like Child, Arlecchino, Aloy, Skirk, or the Traveler in the discussions today, purely because Genshin characterizes them as either from a nation we have not substantially explored yet, like Shenzhnaya, or from another world entirely. Okay, so that can get pretty confusing, so let's look at a specific example, starting in Mondstadt. Now, Mondstadt has 20 characters, spread across almost all of the 7 elements. Now, the most balanced nation should have about 14.29% of its total characters in each of the elements, but as we can see, Mondstadt varies quite a bit. It varies at about an average of 7.87% from that 14.29%, largely getting shafted by their abundance of people in Cryo and complete and utter lack of characters in Dendro. So, in this first category, in the nation element comparison, which nation is the most balanced? Turns out it's actually Liyue, who, while they might have a stacked roster in Pyro, deviates from that 14.29% the least at 5.5%. On the face of it, you might think that Natlan and its fairly diverse roster would be the most spread out, but because of the 3 Electro characters, the results end up like this. Theoretically, if Natlan instead moved, I don't know, Ian-san from Electro to Pyro, they would take the crown as the most balanced nation in the elements category, but instead, Liyue takes the top spot. In the complete opposite position is Sumeru, who has 35.71% of their roster in Dendro and 0 in Geo, resulting in a deviation of more than 11%, making it the least balanced nation in terms of the elements. Moving on to the nation weapon comparison, we see a pretty substantial shift in the results with the raw data here and the percentages here. Now, with 5 weapon categories, to be the most balanced nation in terms of weapons, each nation should be aiming to have 20% of their characters wielding the various weapon types, and what we see from this data, the 2 most recent nations provide polar opposite results. Fontaine seemingly has the most even spread of weapon types held amongst their characters, deviating an average of 4.21% away from the 20% goal, and by only taking a look at Fontaine's roster, this seems to make sense, with all the characters being pretty evenly spread amongst the weapon types. Now, polar opposite to that is Genshin's latest nation, being almost 10% away from the average goal. Taking a look at the numbers, this also makes sense with a stat catalyst wielding roster compared to swords only being used by Shilonen. So in terms of the nation weapon comparison, the most balanced is Fontaine and the least balanced is Natlan. I think it's also important to mention just how close the second least balanced nation is to being the least balanced, because looking at the results, there is only a 0.12% difference between Natlan and Inazuma. And looking at Inazuma's roster, it is honestly surprising to see how the data ended up like this, but I guess that shows why I used the percentages in the first place to ensure a fair baseline. Anyways, looking at their roster, Inazuma's stacked sword and catalyst roster almost pulled them into being the least balanced roster within the weapons category. But perhaps with Natlan being the newest nation, time will shift Inazuma into that last place spot.
Hey, if you're watching this video right now, chances are you are not subscribed, because 100% of people that watch this channel are not subscribed. Subscribe now.
Entering into the final category now, the body type and nation comparison. Now, for this one, let me explain how Genshin's characters work. In Genshin, each character starts by being assigned one of the 5 body models. Child is a tall male, Nahida is a short female. While they are all uniquely designed, they are all formed from one of the 5 body models. So while the Animo boys have a reputation for being short and tiny, they all come from the medium male body model. This is probably most clearly distinguished when doing a Xiao and Chi-Chi comparison. Chi-Chi is assigned assigned short female, while Xiao is assigned medium male. If you're wondering, no, the short male body model does not exist. This is not to be confused with the NPC models, which do exist for kids like Tusser and other such NPCs, but showing the 4 different models here, the models do not align with the playable roster. Okay, so let's check the data. These are the raw numbers, and this is the percentage shifted set. Now, just like the weapon types, there are 5 body types, so each nation should once again be aiming for 20% in each category. The results? Nalin actually takes the top spot here, being fairly spread across the 5 body models, with a range of 1 to 3 characters in each, clocking in at an average 7.61% deviation from the 20% goal. And right above it, you can see the worst performing nation in Fontaine. Which, looking at the raw data, yeah, this makes a ton of sense. 46.15% of Fontaine's roster is comprised of medium female characters, and while Inazuma and Liyue also have a pretty egregious spread, they clearly aren't as unbalanced as Fontaine. So, in the body type nation comparison, Nalin comes out as the most balanced and Fontaine the least. With all that settled, let's try and take a look at the final results, which, if I'm honest, are pretty damn surprising. Let's get into it.
If you made it this far and are interested in supporting the channel, memberships are available for only $1 USD. For that, you get a shout out at the end of every video. Join now!
So this is the data on its own in the 3 categories. Looking at this, you can make several arguments as the most and least balanced nations of Genshin at the end of version 5. You could say that Fontaine and Natlin each had categories in which they were the most and least balanced and therefore cancel each other out, leaving the uncontested Sumeru and Liyue as the least and most balanced nations. You could also give them rankings based on each of their performances in each category, average those rankings out and determine that Liyue and Natlin are the most balanced while Inazuma is the least balanced, and that would also be a pretty decent way to do it too. My only gripe with this method is the fact that we have a tie for the most balanced nations. So to get a definitive most and least balanced, I decided to average out each nation's percentage deviations, seeing which one on average across the 3 categories deviated the most and the least, and in doing so, we arrive at an unexpected answer. You see, the result of this is that Mondstadt actually comes out of this the most balanced, deviating the least from the average of these 6 nations across the 3 categories. The one that deviated the most, Inazuma, with about a 10% deviation from the average across all 3. Therefore, according to the arbitrary rules I set in motion at the beginning of this video, my personal answer to this insanely specific question is that at the end of version 5, the first nation we explored, Mondstadt, is the most balanced, while Inazuma is the least balanced. But that's just me. If you made it this far, first of all, thank you for braving it out, but based on the data presented in this video, what do you think is the most and least balanced Genshin nation? Let me know in the comments below. Now, as always, what did we learn here? Nothing too useful, I hope, but fun to know regardless. Thanks for watching. And shout out to Bonnerhead, Jejabons, Wachel, and Davin for being longtime supporters of the channel. And shout out to everyone who's become a member on YouTube or a sub on Twitch, including Badwolf, Chippy, Daddy Clank, Pixel Monarch, Elmoon, Emperor Valens, Quinoa Ball, Geraldo, GSC Nation, Usurper Noctis, and Fadila Kwan. And a special shout out to everyone who has gifted a sub or membership to the community, including Blue Jonalith, Daddy Clank, Mr. Apple, GSC Nation, and Fructose Tolerant. And even more than that, shout out to those who have gifted more than 10 to the community, including Muhammad Ilias, Bad Goldfish, Geraldo, Nojo, Quinn, and Nevermind. And a special thanks to Allura, Badwolf, and Chip for donating 37 skin, and another thank you to Badwolf and Allura for donating Shonang Show skin, as well as a Piri Knight for the 10 USD, just for Isolde. In addition to all those, thank you to Chip, who has entered the Century Club, gifting more than 100 memberships. And at the end of it all, to round it all out, a massive thank you to Badwolf and Allura, who have gifted more than 300 memberships to the channel. I mean, truly, some of the goats. If you support the channel by becoming a member for 1 USD on YouTube, sub on Twitch, or gift a membership, you also get included in the shoutout at the end of every video. Thanks for watching.